And actually my son went, I wish there were. So that obviously says how much he thinks of me and homeschooling. Now we're logged in here. So, okay. Okay, here we go. Good morning and welcome back to the Coaching Support Summit, which is a summit that I set up in order to speak to people from all corners of the globe on various different topics. Now, so far, we've had lots of different topics like resilience. We've had people even helping with business, with social media, with marketing online, for where people are, tools to help people. And we all have different issues. So this morning, I'm delighted to be joined by Sandra Losty, who has another amazing topic to talk to us about. Sandra, you're very welcome to the summit.
Thank you, Dolores. Thank you for having me.
So, Sandra is the founder of Recovery Hour, which is an online space for people in recovery. Now, I'm actually going to let Sandra talk to you about this topic, and I think it's a wonderful initiative set up by Sandra because it's such an important topic, and one obviously that Sandra has knowledge about and could see that there was a real need in these times for people to get support. So, Sandra, would you like to tell us about this Recovery Hour that you've set up? Thank you.
Super. Thanks, Dolores. Well, my name is Sandra Losty and I'm the founder of Recovery Hour. And Recovery Hour started off on Twitter as a way to connect with other people in recovery. And I'm in recovery myself. I'm in recovery since 1995. And I know the importance of connection. You know, our fellowships are what hold us together. Our fellowships are those other people who understand us and how our minds work. And when things are challenging, you know, what the worst end of that could be for us. It could be a drink or a drug or a gamble or something, some other behavior that's very destructive in our lives, you know. So with the onset of COVID, its meetings were closed down, as with all events and all gatherings of people. And it is so important for people in recovery to connect and to stay connected. And we know, and there's lots of research on this, is that the opposite to addiction is now connection. When we have those connections, addictions are much, much, much easier to manage and to face and to move away from and move towards a life of recovery. So Recovery Hour, it came from, I suppose, thinking about my own darkest hour in my time, you know, and it was a dark hour, Dolores, you know. There was no light in it, there was no joy, there was no happiness, there was nothing that I would have in my life today. And
Well, that's
that's where the
wonderful.
name.
I mean, I think that it's so wonderful that it's somebody like yourself that's been through it, because I'm a therapist, I'm a coach, but I haven't been through this particular issue. So I think when it's someone that can really empathize with that dark space in this particular area, I can only commend you and say well done for seeing that and for actually then taking action, which is, I suppose, sometimes the thing that we can all say how awful the world is at the moment or how awful things are, but taking really real action to help people then and support people is the thing that we need really.
It is, and thank you for that. But equally, the space was set up so that I could connect to people also, because I equally need that support and that connection with other people, you know. So it's not I'm way ahead of anybody. I, on a daily basis, have to manage my recovery and do
Okay.
all of those things that have kept me sober for 25 years. So I don't ever want to get to a point where I feel, oh, I don't have to do any of that stuff anymore, so I'm grand now. That's the complacent mind that might eventually bring me back to a thought that would think, sure, one won't do any harm. You
Okay,
know?
interesting.
So it's about maintaining the
Hmm.
recovery and continuing to do what has worked for the last 25 years. And I don't want to put that at risk, Dolores. I got a good life. I don't have loads of material things, but I have a good life. I can put my head on the pillow. I can sleep most nights if I'm not up all night talking online.
On Twitter.
And I put, go Twitter, exactly. And you know, I have a good life. I'm employable today. You know, I can sleep. I've peace of mind. I've all of those things that so eluded me when I was active. You know, I seen them in other people and I envied them in other people, but they were so far removed from where I could have living the way I was living.
Okay. So tell us a bit more about that, you know, about that reaching out, let's say. I would have thought maybe, possibly, you see, I don't, it's not an area that thankfully that I don't have, you know, I don't, I shouldn't say thankfully, but I don't have any dealings in as a therapist in this area. So how do people connect with each other? You know, I would have, you know, the people that are in the fellowships, let's say, talk to me about how you contact people like, you know, people that would be in those fellowships, because I would have thought maybe some people wouldn't like to be very public on social media, possibly maybe at the beginning, you know, for any particular reason they mightn't want to be. How do you reach out to those?
Yeah, yeah, that's a really good question because, you know, anonymity is so important, and
Yeah,
particularly for a
that's
new
what I was trying
person
to
coming
say.
in. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. No, it's really important, and for new people coming in to a space where they realize, you know, their drinking or their drugging is or their gambling is a problem, and they wanting to do something about it. Yes, you need to protect that. You need people need the space to just be there and know that that's how life is, and they're making a decision and they're doing certain things to get them in a place, and that's perfect. That's absolutely perfect. We need to mind those people and protect them, and there's no expectation on anybody. There's no expectation on anybody. I personally want recovery, the topic of recovery, to be more normalized in our
Okay.
society, because we're living next door to each other. You know, we're passing each other by in the shops, we're saying hello to each other, and it's about being visible and vocal. For me, I want to be visible about being in recovery and being vocal about it, because I want people to know there's a good life here, that you can have an excellent life without a drink or a drug or a gamble, that torment that goes on in the head. And we all need people who have been there before us, don't we? Whether it's business, we need people to have been the first entrepreneur to know, actually, I can have a small business.
Yeah.
That person's done it. You know, we've all had that person. So more and more people are saying, I'm in recovery. You know, there's a whole movement that's,
Okay.
you know, it's kind of big in America called the recovery movement. And that's the call to action. The call to action is to be talking about recovery so that it's normalized in our society and not this secret thing that people know but nobody talks about.
Yeah. So it's not obviously just an Irish thing that we don't talk about these things. It's
Yeah,
worldwide.
absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. And I
So
suppose
yeah,
like,
it's so just to clarify, it's not to
sure.
say people who feel they want to step into recovery that you have to come out and say, I'm in
Hmm.
recovery. No, there are people, and I found people on Twitter, people who were saying, I'm in recovery. There was a hashtag there called Recovery Posse. I connected in with Recovery Posse and connected in with a load of other people. And, you know, they're all connected with me now with Recovery Hour, and we have a little Recovery Hour family, and it's fantastic. You know, people are making friendships, we're making bonds we never would have made if it hadn't been for COVID, because we probably wouldn't be doing these meetings.
Sure. Sure. So, you know, and for the people then, like say there's somebody listening here now that doesn't actually want to be visible on Twitter and that are is there a service for them, or can you give advice to people that want the anonymity?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. So if anybody is on Twitter, you can find me on @recoveryhour. If you connect with me and I connect with you, we can DM. So that stays private. I don't tell anybody I'm talking to you about this at all. That's no problem at all. And there's loads of support and advice there in terms of where people can go to get, because people may come with a particular issue and then it transpires there's other issues there, so we can direct people to those other support services that they might need. So there's information there for people to get, and that's no problem. But I really want to reiterate, there is no expectation for anybody to say, I'm in recovery. Anybody who is saying that willingly
Hmm.
themselves, because that's what they want to do. But there's no expectation on new people coming in to do that.
Yeah.
But we do have people coming in that are 3 days and they're saying, I'm 24 hours without a drink or a drug or a gamble. They're saying I'm a week, you know, and we're cheering them on and we're encouraging them, and we're there. We're like, that's it. That's every day you do that is every day you're in recovery.
And it's accountability, I think we need that in all parts of our lives. I know certainly I do in business sometimes, and coaching I might do. And, if I love to join challenges for that reason, because
Yeah,
there's a goal at the end, and there's
yeah,
accountability each day. If you and I love that. And
yeah.
it's, I suppose it's like no more than being on a recovery. If I decide to drop out of a challenge in day 3, it's my decision, but there's
Yes.
group support there should I wish or should I feel at any stage of the challenge that I'm feeling like I need to get out or whatever.
Yeah, yeah. There is something I started today called The One Thing, and a
Okay.
few people have signed up for this. They've said that they will do it. And it's about looking at your day, because as time goes on and the new way of living becomes normalized, if you like, or stabilized, and we're doing things, we kind of forget that we're we're doing the right things. They become just part of our second
Hmm.
nature. So this little challenge, well, not so much a challenge, but it's a one thing I put out there and said, is there one thing that you're going to concentrate on today and say, this one thing is what helps me stay in recovery and away from what my disease would tell me to do. So again, it's just for people to remind themselves, I'm doing, like my one today was the third step prayer, which was handing my will and my life over to the care of God. That's my choice. That's how I choose to do that. And it's something that I do to remind myself that if I let my self will run riot, I can go, you know, I can go off. I can think I'm the bee's knees, you know. So it's a way of grounding me and bringing me back to, I'm connected to something bigger than myself, you know. So that's what we're doing on Twitter, is that one thing. So you might see that hashtag floating around, one thing, and that's what we're asking people to do. What is that one thing that is you saying, this is what I do to maintain my recovery? That's the opposite to what I would do in my addiction, you know. And it's fantastic.
Yeah, that sounds great. I must link more in with you, and please do tag me anytime as well, because
Sure.
Twitter, I love it, as you know, fast and furious. Sometimes we don't see everything.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I love all that. I think there again, the last person I spoke to talked about structure and structuring the day. So this is no
Mm.
different to for anything, for any of us trying to do anything, which is wonderful. I think it's a positive step. It's about structure again. It's
Yeah.
about looking at what step I can make today in order to do something for me, not,
Mm.
you know, obviously it ripples out our everything, all our actions ripples out into everything, but it's actually self-care to look after ourselves. It's like taking the oxygen mask on a plane, and that's the way I look at it. It's like it's an act of self-care to do what you've just said there to do,
Yeah.
is to see how I structure myself today, knowing that I will be a better person for everybody around me. And it's a very positive step.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's that conscious decision to do
Mm.
something. It's not this mindless thing that you just do, and it's a conscious decision to connect with something, and it brings it more into our lives when we do it that way.
Okay, so any of the sessions that you've seen that are offline, what have you groups that you meet online, or anyone that comes to you, and you refer them on, as you mentioned? Are you seeing that people are taking this up right now?
Oh yes, yes. And what's happening is all fellowships, to the best of my knowledge anyway, in line with guidelines of gatherings and numbers of gatherings, all of the face-to-face meetings and fellowships are closed. So people can't access their 12-step program the way they used to. So we're having to adapt and to pivot, you know, and do it online. And it's not everybody's cup of tea, but in the absence of what you're used to, it's the next best thing. You know, we get to see each other on the screen, we get to talk in real time. People are there, like, because it's worldwide, there's any amount of meetings going on around the
Okay.
world, or any time. Like I was on one last night that was based in Prince Edward Island, you know, and it was fantastic, you know. And in the meeting, I have a meeting at 8:30 Irish time, and that's the same as GMT time. We're in the same time zone. So it's 8:30 every evening. We have a meeting, and a women's meeting at 7 p.m. on a Wednesday. And at the 8:30 meeting last night, we had people from Scotland, we had people from Dublin, we had people from Leeds, we had people from London, we had a chap who's Scottish, living in Nova Scotia, driving a truck, and was in North Carolina, you know. So we had people from Idaho, you know. So once you know what the link is, like this, once you know what the link is, you can join. Now it's password protected for
Mm-hmm.
obvious reasons. So there is that, you're going to have to reach out to myself to get that password. And we always try and make sure that it's only people in recovery who are connecting in with us, to protect people's anonymity and make it a safe space, because that's really important, that these online meetings are safe spaces for everybody.
Yes, and I'm glad you explained that more, because I think that's something huge. You know, it's like if somebody was going to a psychologist for any particular reason. I mean, that, and I had this conversation with somebody else as well recently. It's like that the online space can scare some people, because it's like it's almost, you know, there can be a fear of am I talking to the whole world?
Yeah,
Whilst of course, no, if it's something is a meeting is password protected and it's private, it's not recorded. It's just a conversation
absolutely.
between two people.
Absolutely. And people don't have to talk if they don't want. So they can come, they
Okay.
can listen, they can turn their microphone off, they can turn the camera on, off rather, and they can do, we will ask if they want to speak. And if they don't want to speak, that's absolutely fine. There's no expectation on anybody to come in, because very often people just need to listen and
Okay.
maybe hear something that they can identify with, but are not ready to talk yet. That's absolutely fine.
That's phenomenal. Yeah, that's all good. That makes it very clear and very, I think, very, it sounds like a really very good safe space.
Yeah.
Fantastic, Sandra. Great work. You know what I mean? I know that you're not doing it for, you know, you're doing it, you say so eloquently, for your own sake as well. But it is, I mean, we do need to have to have the leaders that take the initiative to do these things and to set up the meetings. So, you know, good for you.
I was very fortunate, Dolores, when I came into recovery. I had really good role models who role modeled what service is and how it impacts positively other people, you know. And I suppose that was very attractive to me. You know, if I can be one of those leaders in any given situation, then I want to be that kind of a leader, you know, or I want to be that person that says I can do this because I can. It's within my capacity to do this,
Hmm.
and it's fine, and I get as much back as I'm giving. So I'm very happy to give that little bit of, it's not a big deal really.
Great, Sandra. So, can I just kind of talk maybe a little bit more generally as well? If there's anyone
Yeah,
listening to the replay, listening live on YouTube, you know, rather than, even if anybody wanted to reach out, if there was someone even that hasn't gone and taken the step of going to a fellowship and signing up, is there any I hate to say tips because it's not really the right word, advice that you could give to people that, you know, maybe may find that during this time when maybe they're not working anymore, you know,
yeah.
it could be a time when if somebody is drinking or uh, whatever addiction they have, it might be coming to the forefront, or they might be doing more of it now in these times because they mightn't be working anymore. What advice could you, solid, concrete advice, could you give to anyone that may be struggling at the moment?
Sure. And yes, this kind of a crisis is, it's going to open, you know, kind of manholes of issues that will pop out because people are not in their routine anymore. They're not in their workspace. They're not managing how they're engaging with substances that they normally would, you know. So what I would say is, if people are noticing that they're drinking earlier in the day because they're bored, that's something that you might say, yeah, that's not a social drink, you know. Generally, people who are social drinkers don't drink because they're bored. They're drinking because they're in an environment and they're with friends or family, or there's a context to it other than the alcohol, you know. So
Yeah.
when that activity just becomes about the alcohol, or trying to offset some feeling, you know, trying to change how you feel, then that might be a little warning sign, you know, there. Also, one of the main kind of phrases that we would hear is, if it costs you more than money. So if things like
Mm,
relationships are suffering, your job mightn't be an issue now because you're not in work, but some people are working from home, you
yeah.
know. I was on a totally different meeting, excuse me, the other day. It was nothing to do with recovery, and it was about, I don't know, 3 o'clock maybe, and somebody was having a glass of wine because they were at home. And there was quite a lot of this, you know, but sure, what else would you be doing? And there was a bit of, you know, kind of joviality and that sort of stuff. And I got the context of it, but that can become a habit very, very quickly because it's
Mm,
accepted. You're getting some kind of affirmative feedback that, yeah, sure, what else would you be doing? You know, so those things, if your drinking habits start to come earlier in the day, that might be something to look at. If your relationships are suffering, that is definitely something to look at. If it's costing you more than money, which covers everything, that's definitely something to look at. Try and be productive. And I know we're all going, oh, I can't do the house anymore or the garden or whatever, but there's always something to do. There's always some job or task or something to kind of think about. Look for what that is that might help you at the end of, this isolation period that we're in, rather than let it build up to the end. I remember years ago somebody saying to me that his sister said to him, and his name was Robert, and he's passed since from alcoholism. And his sister used to say to him, Robert, if drink was the answer, what was the question?
Mm.
So I always think of that myself. It's like, yeah, what was the question? There probably wasn't one. We just went straight to, this will solve it. This will solve how I'm feeling. So really trying positive distractions, positive interactions, try a few online meetings, sit and listen, talk to people, connect with people. There's a story for everybody to connect to when it comes to fellowships. Somebody has been there, done that, what you've done,
Mm.
and there's lots to identify with, but that would be my main tips, Dolores. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. Looking for the positive, looking for something else to distract. I think that's very helpful. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Hard. And we're anticipating a lot of people, when this isolation period is over, we're anticipating a lot of people realizing just how bad their drinking is, because they're now probably at home or they're out of their routine, and they realize that this is not just something they're cramming into 2 or 3 hours of an evening. This is something they would do if they had all of the time in the world. And now we're in a situation where we have all the time in the world, really, most of us do. And they start to realize that actually drink is more a bigger part of my life than I maybe want it to be or would like it to be. And there is an anticipation that we will start to see more people filtering into fellowships when this is over, which we're delighted about. So that'll be good that it surfaced that for some people, but for other people, the problem will get worse, and then we're potentially looking at a rise in domestic violence because
Mm.
of the alcohol intake. So it goes way beyond just a person picking up a drink. There's massive issues that come from drinking, and a person not being in control of themselves because of the alcohol. So we're praying for everybody, really, that we all get out of this as safe as possible, but there will be consequences that will be unsavory.
Yeah, totally. And I think you brought up a good point there. And it's one that I was going to ask you about as well. If somebody was in a relationship, or maybe it's one of it's a member of their family, if they felt that somebody in their family, now that they're spending more time with them, has an issue around alcoholism, or even if they're in a relationship where it's very obvious to them that there is there any I suppose support for people to go to, that it's not about themselves, they're not the ones that have the actual issue, but somebody in their family has, can they get support at this time?
They can, yes, and that would be Al-Anon. That would be the sister organization for the friends and families of the person who has the alcoholism or the addiction. And I'm sure that they would have similar online meetings for them to connect into, because none of us can meet face to face in this way anymore. So they would just have to Google Al-Anon, and it would come up in their local
Can you spell that
Google
out
search.
for people, please?
Yeah, it would be AL, and it's usually hyphen Anon, ANON, Al-Anon.
Oh, Al-Anon. That's good to
Yeah,
know, just as a resource for someone that could be listening
yeah,
and just wants to sort of, I suppose even like that, it's just to get some advice for themselves, some support, to know that there's somebody you can turn to. Because I did read an article there yesterday that one of our buddies posted, and that was a point that did come up. This man in Italy was saying, and one of the points he made, which struck me, was more women will get beaten. And that's a big statement to make in these kind of situations. And I know that men suffer domestic violence, of course. So it's an issue for all of us. But like, there are these real issues that will affect certainly society on a large scale. So I think it's to get the word out there of any support that we can offer.
yeah,
We have two here now: Recovery Hour and the Al-Anon, and I think that that's a great start. And you can always, all we can do is share as much as we can to help the most vulnerable in these times.
Absolutely. And each Alcoholics Anonymous kind of area or district, they would have their Zoom meetings, ID meetings on their site. So again, if you go into Alcoholics Anonymous, it'll come up where the Zoom meetings are if people want to go
Okay.
into something that maybe their local meeting has a Zoom meeting and they want to stick with people that they know, that's fine. They'll find that information on the Alcoholics Anonymous site.
Good to know. Good to know. And how about gambling and that and all those? I suppose there are associations as well, are there?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And the recovery hour is set up to have all people with problems come in and
Okay.
get support. The only identifier that we ask is that you're in recovery. For wherever that is from, that's entirely up to yourself. And we try and read a variety of the literature from each of the fellowships because we all like to hear what we're familiar with. We all like to, I might know that you're in recovery from another addiction, but I like to hear the stuff that's relevant to me, and you like to hear the stuff that's relevant to you because it helps us connect. So we try to be as inclusive as we possibly can with the readings, and people can identify in whatever way they want to. And some people are not in fellowships. Some people have recognized their drinking has got to a point where they're not happy with it, and they stopped drinking, recognized they had a problem, don't go to a fellowship, but they've identified as being in recovery, and that's absolutely fine as well.
Okay, that's good as well. That's good to know as well. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
So it's very inclusive, really. Um,
absolutely.
Thank you very much, Sandra, for sharing all that. Is there anything that you'd like to leave us with? Or, I mean, in fact, as well, if anybody that's on live wants to join the conversation, please do. If there's anything that you want to add.
I found for reminders. Subways PP and capital.
Sorry, my phone
Oh,
started talking to me there. Siri just started to talk to me for somehow it picked up what I said.
I suppose just to say, Dolores, that it's very important. I seen this earlier on, and I think the person might be on the call here today. I'm not quite sure if they logged in, but they put up a post on Twitter and said, because we would say this at the end of fellowship meetings, who you see here, what you hear here, when you leave here, please let it stay here.
Mhm.
So again, that's another layer of protection of anonymity for people is, yes, you take the information out that is helpful to you, but who you saw in the room and what you heard in the room stays in the room.
Mm.
So it helps us to be more mindful of the confidentiality of people's identification and their just their anonymity, just to be mindful of that. So what happens in a room, in a fellowship room, we take that online. We do the readings, we do what people are familiar with, but we equally take the principles that have kept this fellowship going for years and years and years, since 1935. These are the things that have kept these fellowships together, and we do exactly the same thing online. So while some of us connect outside on Twitter and that sort of stuff, and we're conversing and having fun and all that kind of thing, when it comes to a meeting, we treat that as if we're sitting in a room face to face, and we will protect your anonymity with our lives. So I want people to be reassured of that.
Yeah, and I think that's good. That's good to know. Again, as I say, it's good to reiterate that point. Okay. Anything else, or will we? Anyone want to say anything? You're more than welcome to pop on and say anything. So well done again, Sandra, is all I can say to you. It's
Thank
great, and I'm delighted to have to share this important conversation in the summit as well, because it is going out, globally, which is great, and what you're doing. So again, I'm going to just it's at the handle on Twitter at Recovery Hour. Now, if somebody's not on Twitter, how can they
Yeah.
contact?
They can then email me if they want. It's recoveryhourie@gmail.com.
You might send me that in a
I'll
messenger,
send
and,
you a link.
and
Yeah,
it's okay for
yeah.
me to share that on the page, is it?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And the website is in process at the moment, so there will be a website.
Perfect.
Now that I have the time, there'll be a website.
See, there again, there's a positivity coming out of it.
Absolutely,
It's positive for some
absolutely.
people that there will be a website, and fair play to you for doing that in your time. Sandra, thank you so much for joining our